On behalf of Allianz Trade, a very warm welcome to this webinar. Thank you for virtually joining us today and making time to learn more about AI and what the impact can be on the work of finance professionals. We all know that AI is booming. Companies invest heavily in AI tools and applications, and if not, well, they risk falling behind. But not only companies are aware of the benefits that AI can have or could have on the use of AI, but unfortunately, also fraudsters are using AI to get to their goals. So how can you stay ahead and how can you deploy AI tools in a way that you as a finance professional can profit from it? So I have invited two very interesting and inspiring guests here around the table. Joe van Burik, he is a tech journalist and radio producer at the Dutch business news radio, BNR. He's an expert on digital technology, including AI, privacy, streaming platforms and video games. A very warm welcome, Joe. And Johan Geerooms, risk director at Allianz Trade. Johan will explain how Allianz Trade is integrating AI in the field of risk management. And he will also show the impact of AI on your work, your day-to-day work. So welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Joe, of course, you're quite famous in the Netherlands.
I try.
Not in Belgium, not yet, though. What was the spark that got you interested in technology? In
technology, I think that started with video games, which I've been playing from a very young age, and just seeing what's possible with technology to create stuff. You know, to leverage creativity, to build new worlds, and to get people engaged in the world of technology and entertain themselves, but also increase productivity and open up new possibilities. So with the developments in modern technology, it's always good to know, as with every technology, that it can be used for good and for bad. And that's why I think it's important to talk about it, to be aware of it, and to have a societal debate about the possibilities of technology. And AI is, I think, the most prominent example, looking at the past 2.5, 3 years, what's possible, what we should do and what we shouldn't do, and all in all, what we should be aware of.
But it's a field of interest that is changing continuously. So how do you keep up with all the changes?
Well, keeping track of the news and trying to talk about it on Business News Radio every day, talking to people, talking to sources, reading analysis, and just trying to keep a broad scope of what's possible, what the various experts in various fields with various interpretations of technology have to say, and then try to formulate your own vision.
Yeah. Well, AI exists for quite some time now. Generative AI is really new. So, Johan, when did Allianz Trade jump on the bandwagon to implement AI tools and applications within your daily operations?
That's a good question. Artificial intelligence needs to say that it has become a container concept. So, before the launch of generative artificial intelligence, we already have worked with big data and with machine learning. Already for more than 20 years, we are calculating, for example, the probability of predicted default of customers, of our customers all over the world. So that means that we would like to assess their risk, and machine learning enable us to do it in a much better way.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm very much looking forward to your presentations. But before we move on, I'd like to ask you, ladies and gentlemen, everyone who's watching, if you do have questions to one of our guests, please forward them on the chat, and we will address them after the presentations. This will take for more or less 45 minutes, so this means that we've got 10 to 50 minutes left for the questions to be answered at the end of this webinar. All right, let's start with you, Joe. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Francesca. So my name is Joe van Burik. I work for Business News Radio, and to briefly elaborate on the introduction Francesca just gave me, I host a weekly news radio talk show on BNR together with Ben van Burik. He's a bit more famous than I am in the Netherlands, being a former speed skater and all, but now he's very much trying to get his own grips with technology. And we have guests on our show every week at Business News Radio. We try to get in touch with thought leaders, researchers, C-levels, entrepreneurs in digital technology in various fields, and try to get their thoughts, and then ask them about what's going on and what their next objective in the world of technology is going to be. Obviously, AI has been around for some time, as Johan just said as well. It started back in 1956. I have to say this is one of the few slides in my presentation that actually contains text, because I prefer to speak to you and just illustrate what goes with that in the slides. This is a slide I actually borrowed from Microsoft themselves to showcase the history of AI. As said, it started in the 50s. Then it gained some more traction at the end of the century when machine learning came about. And as Johan just mentioned, Allianz and other businesses in the industry have used that for quite some time to already predict certain risk assessments. Deep learning came along in 2017 as means of using neural networks to connect various data points to even get even more insight in what's possible using data to predict certain outcomes. The interesting is that machine learning is actually still very much in use as a term, even though AI is now the umbrella term, if you will. For instance, Apple still very much prefers the term machine learning, but has only switched to AI because shareholders prefer the term, and you see shares going up whenever an investor call includes the term AI. So now that brings us to generative AI, which really came in swing in 2021. We first saw image generators come along, such as DALL-E and Midjourney. Then there was some, experimentation with audiovisual generation using Gen AI. And then ultimately, as we all know, in November 2021, ChatGPT came about. And, well, the world's been changing ever since. Now, the interesting thing for me, and this is what we talk about on Business News Radio a lot, is what is actually the impact of AI? Looking at the hype cycle, which is here illustrated by the stock courses of the Magnificent Seven, the big tech companies that make out the most of the American stock market, which all use AI to a certain extent, to a large extent, and dominate developments in that sense. We're always looking for nuance in that sense. And I'm the first to say I'm not your typical AI trend watcher to tell you about what's possible with AI, but what's the impact of AI? What are the products that are coming along? And what is, actually the way to change businesses and society as a result? One of the interesting things is who's actually making money with AI? Well, the first one, I'm sure you're all aware, is NVIDIA, which has skyrocketed in terms of shares, is very much on the ball with AI developments as a designer of the chips that are used in most notably data centers, which are used to use AI, to develop AI, and to make sure companies are able to use AI in their processes. Then, to a slightly lesser extent, the big cloud hyperscalers, Amazon with web services most notably, but also Microsoft with Azure, and Google, or actually their parent company Alphabet. They are the ones which are leveraging AI to use more cloud compute, to sell more cloud compute to businesses which want to use AI. And then there's the chip manufacturer companies such as TSMC, which are enjoying an AI boom, as well as the suppliers such as ASML in the Netherlands, manufacturing chip-making machines, which are also benefiting from the AI hype. But other companies, the jury's still out on that one. We're not sure whether the value of AI is actually translating into an increase of revenue and profit. But there is a development, people are still excited about it, and we're going to see whether AI is going to bring more opportunities and or more risks, because that's always the topic to talk about when it comes to AI. We've all seen the headlines, especially over the last 2 to 3 years, about what ChatGPT can do and what it can't do and what it should do and what it shouldn't do. And when should you use it? Should you use it for health advice? Should you use it to write a poem for the holidays? There's all these questions, and most notably in professional use, ChatGPT is a divisive topic, if you will, because people want to use it, but should they use it and are they allowed to use it? Now, the next step, obviously, because we're all here, is the impact on financial professionals of AI. And I've actually tried to narrow this down to 2 main topics. One is risk management, the core business, if you will, for example, at Allianz Trade, but also in terms of fraud. And this is also a field where AI has a big impact. I will stress that in terms of risk management, future possibilities and considerations are mainly the focus of my presentation, and Johan will go in depth when it comes to what's actually going on. But I will paint a picture of what's, what should be see your thoughts, what could be possible in the future, and what is very much worth talking about today. In terms of fraud, it's very much about current risks and solutions, and I'll be focusing on the risks and situation that AI is already impacting in terms of threats. Now, you might argue AI image generators shouldn't be used at all times. I will encourage you to buy pictures from photographers as well, but I still found it was apt to use AI-generated images in this case, because this is an example which I find particularly funny when I was talking with a colleague at Business News Radio, who said the thing with AI in risk management and forecasting is, for instance, you could wonder yourself, what's the influence of Indonesian slug population on Japanese tree growth? And you might wonder, that's a very quaint example. Why would Japanese snails without a house, if you will, have an impact on Japanese growth of trees, in fact? Well, it may, because when you're using AI, there's a lot of factors that you can take into account with machine learning. You can actually use exponentially more variables and parameters to explore for risk analysis. You can see what's possible, what you might have never thought about, what would be possible, what could have an impact. But the thing is, AI takes factors into account that may not be visible to you. That depends on the way you're using the AI, which model you're using, how is it trained, what are the guidelines in place, who are the people in your workplace who are actually involved day to day with keeping AI in check, and what's your AI supplier, if you will. These are all generic questions, if you will, about how do you use AI. But in the end, there is an increased risk of a mismatch if you use more AI, and especially if the AI isn't controlled particularly well. And in that case, any risk analysis forecast or any situation in which you use AI to get a certain outcome, because it's a black box often, you're not entirely sure what data was used to get this outcome. So, again, the question is, how relevant are the Indonesian slugs actually when you're trying to get a forecast or an analysis on a hypothetical situation, perhaps? So one of the tips I can give you, having spoken to various experts in this field, is always try to identify the key driving factors in what you're trying to achieve, whether that's a risk analysis, whether that's a forecast, or whether that's something completely different, such as getting an image or getting a text. You always want to know, what would the AI do? Which factors would it take into account to get to a certain outcome? And with that, always try to emphasize which AI you're using, how you're selecting any AI application, how you're fine-tuning the model or having your supplier fine-tune it for you. But make sure you're having a solid conversation about what you're trying to achieve. And this is a must in any situation, any scenario in which AI plays an increased role in your business operations or risk analysis most notably. But in any industry in which AI has an impact, it's good to be aware what's the AI you're using, what are you trying to achieve, and question yourself, is AI the right tool to use in this particular field? Currently, I would still say it's not the norm, especially in risk assessment, as I've discovered in doing my research with this as well. But it's not unthinkable in any field that, given historical technology creep, that AI will actually at some point be considered by someone in some company in any industry to be the leading way of using this. And then the risk is others will follow, and it's a slippery slope. So, priorities now and long term. Always be sure you're mindful, you're thoughtful about selection of AI. When you've decided to use AI in any specific risk assessment or prediction of any kind, figure out the key factors. Make sure you know on beforehand what do you want to know, what's relevant, trying to get to know that, and try to prevent any irrelevant factors that may be influencing your forecast or prediction or anything you're trying to get as an outcome. Additionally, always keep that human oversight. Make sure humans are in charge when it comes to decision making. I will stress this is very much the current situation in a lot of industries, including at Allianz. But always stay on the ball. Make sure humans are involved in the process and are leading in the process. And also, and this is especially relevant in the financial industry, adjust your rates accordingly when AI is coming into play. Because at the moment, AI requires an investment. It will currently usually increase costs. It may not bring down costs just yet. It may in the future. We're not entirely sure. But don't move too fast, nor too slow. Don't already increase your rates. Don't already lower your rates, because you may end up either running into the ground or have rivals which are rivaling your business. An additional consequence of AI usage, which you may have heard, is carbon footprint. And it's not just about using compute, which requires more energy, but also costs, as I've just mentioned before. And it is undeniable that AI has a carbon footprint, which is actually showcased in this slide with Google's emissions. Like any major company, I will say, they have their yearly carbon footprint report, but they've actually stopped to buy carbon offsets, to buy carbon credits to offset their energy consumption, because they're not sure about the energy consumption this year and in the near future, trying to get AI where they want it to be. It's a very similar situation with Microsoft and Amazon, which is actually, like Google, invested in nuclear energy to be able to still get the energy required, while still aiming for a net zero carbon footprint in 2030. But it's still very much unclear whether nuclear energy is the way. They've also only indicated their interest and intention. They've not committed to it. But question yourself, as a whole, does this process need AI? Does my company need AI? And if so, make sure you embrace it effectively and efficiently. Now, the other part I was already announcing to talk about is fraud, because that is also an increased threat as the AI boom has come about. Especially with AI and machine learning innovations, because it's possible, like I've said before, that technology is used for good, but it can be used for bad as well. And bad actors have access to AI technology, whether we want it or not, most notably given that in AI a lot of technology is open source and thus a commodity, if you will, including for bad actors. And thus malicious use is not very hard to achieve. We can look at fairly recent examples this year. I mean, we've just seen Trump become the new president-elect, but in the presidential race, if you will, we saw a lot of images and videos which were shared on X, Elon Musk seeing here pictured, and they were actually augmenting the discourse in the debate, because here we see an image of Trump with people of color, which was not an actual picture. It was generated with AI. We see an image of Kamala Harris, which was generated with AI. And the most notable example was actually, we see Joe Biden here holding a phone, but there were people getting phone calls from Joe Biden, which were AI generated, and they heard him talking about not to vote for him, which was obviously not his actual voice, but it still happened because AI is available to bad actors to use this. These are public examples and situations that have a societal impact. You can argue it's still fairly limited. If you look at the reports from big tech companies, they will all say it's not as bad as it could have been, but it's still happening. And research shows there is an increased activity among malicious actors to leverage this technology more and more, because they can and because they will. And we should be aware of that. We should try to at least recognize it and, if possible, prevent it. But it's not always possible. And especially with business leaders, I mean, if it's possible for the president or possible president in the US, C-level executives can also be cloned, if you will. We know AI-generated text, ChatGPT as an example, which can be used to generate text quite easily for phishing emails. And you've all had your cybersecurity trainings, and you've all seen these emails which says, you need to click this link to supply me with this document. And you all know you should be aware of that. But that's in the current situation. What may have already happened to you, I hope not, but it could, is you getting a phone call from your C-level executive, like in the US if you were a voting citizen, from Joe Biden, and this C-level voice will tell you, you need to wire me this money, but this can be achieved through voice cloning using AI, and it's a proper threat to be aware of. And the most notable one, which is also on the horizon, is a video called deepfake. We've already seen an example going as recent as March 22, when we saw Ukrainian President Zelensky in a video elaborating on how they would have surrendered to the Russians, but they didn't actually do. But AI was used to generate a video which did show Zelensky saying that. And this is something which could also be used to imitate C-level executives and make it even more believable that they're trying to get you to do something. So what should you do? Risk mitigation in all senses of the word. Obviously, increased level of authentication on any platform level you're using in your company or in your industry. There are various ways of authentications. We know them all. It's not just about passwords, it's about two-factor authentication. And it goes beyond that just to ensure only the right authentication, for instance, acknowledges the wiring of large amounts of money. Additionally, as you're all aware, cybersecurity trainings, they are actually important, people. Make sure you don't skip over them, don't snooze on them, take them seriously, and try to talk about them with the people, with the experts, with your colleagues. Recognize situations. When someone's asking you, can I just walk inside with you in the building? Don't just let into that. These are things that can actually lead to AI misuse as well, and misuse by bad actors in that sense. As a few closing notes, I've borrowed this slide from the Dutch intelligence service, AIVD. This is part of their national cybersecurity agenda. And this actually showcases various possibilities that bad actors can use to influence AI models which are used by companies, including poisoning attacks, bad actors inputting data in AI models and systems which are generating different outcomes than you have predicted. So like I was telling you 10 minutes ago, you may be very much on the ball on what's the AI doing for our company, because our own experts are very much looking into that. But if a bad actor is putting in data from the outside and you're still getting a different outcome, you'll not have gained anything you wanted. Similarly, with backdoor attacks and reverse engineering, actually this week in our show at BNR, we had a cybersecurity entrepreneur. He used to be an ethical hacker in his teens, who mentioned, yeah, we are using AI to simulate hacks on companies to get an insight on what's their weaknesses, how can AI actually be used to infiltrate their systems, and this is very much a current risk which the Dutch security service is making us aware of. So always ensure the quality of your data sets, make sure stuff doesn't get in from the outside by bad actors, and make sure you have a robust system in place to prevent yourselves from attacks which may be empowered by the use of AI. Ultimately, I think the main question, if you want to live with AI in finance, and this is not really a choice because it's out there and you need to be aware and see how you can use it in a good way, empower your nerds. I'm one of them. I'm not the most prominent nerd. I just talk about it. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a programmer. But I will tell you, take them seriously. Empower them. Let them run through your systems. Let them try and break things. And let them talk to you about it. Let them explain to you what you should know, what you should be aware of, what you should prioritize in using AI safely. And this may be slightly harder because it was only this week that Randstad issued a warning that it may lead to a shortage of AI-skilled engineers. We already have a shortage of engineers trying to build applications, but now there's AI as a new specialty, and people need to be very much invested and in the knowledge of how to use AI. So make sure you keep an eye out for people who are very much, skilled in using AI, guiding AI, and take them seriously. And I will finish off with a bit of self-promotion. Make sure you stay sharp, as we say at Business News Radio. Read, watch, listen, talk. Make sure you're always invested in what's happening in AI. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Joe. That was quite a ride.
Thank you.
But very interesting. Thank you very much. You mentioned and you showed a slide at the beginning of the companies who are really making money with this new technology. Well, new, it's not brand new, but this new technology. But there is some concern, I'm sure, about companies being very relying on the big US tech companies.
Yeah.
Is that a threat that we have to take into account, do you think?
Yes, very much so. The hard part is it's all being developed in the US because that's where the money flows. It's far easier for any tech company to get investment money than it is in Europe, for instance. So as a result, it's still happening there. This is mainly a plea to European governments in trying to not just make sure the investment money is there, but also the regulations or stimulations, rather, for tech companies in Europe to flourish, to be able to develop their own technology, their own AI systems. France is actually the leading example in that sense because they're really looking at what do tech companies need to flourish. You have Mistral as actually a leading AI company in France because they know what to do. And we should very much encourage all European countries to allow tech companies to develop, because we're going to use the systems anyway, preferably from Europe and not from the US.
Yeah, well, it's a self-learning technology, so people are scared also about a lack of transparency. You mentioned that humans should stay involved, but is that practically possible? Because it is self-learning.
Yeah, well, you need to make sure you have the right experts on the working floor. You need to make sure you have the right engineers, and don't just count on your tech supplier, if you will, to figure it out for you. Make sure you understand, or have the people close to you understand the technology you want to use. Otherwise, you're just jumping on a train and you have no idea who's controlling it. So you want to make sure one of your people, at least, is in that cockpit to see where you're going using the AI technology.
Yeah, okay. Well, we could go on, but I leave it up to the viewers. If they have any questions, please forward them, and we address those questions at the end of this part of the webinar, because we've got still one presentation to go. Johan Geerooms, Risk Director, Allianz Trade. So you will tell us more about why and how Allianz Trade has implemented AI within its operations.
Yeah, indeed. Why do we invest in artificial intelligence? It's nowadays, of course, of the utmost importance in analyzing data and making decisions based on insight from huge data is, of course, our core business. We are a data-driven company. I also would like, of course, to achieve a certain competitive advantage versus the competition, what we also do. I think the key drivers are, as I mentioned, growth. Growth is very important. Secondly, the complexity has also increased, which requires also a higher need for applications regarding artificial intelligence. And that complexity is, I would say, there is put on an accelerator on it due to the fact that we also have the impact of ESG, the impact of geopolitics. So it's not only financial data, which were the core of our business, but also other factors and also the ponderations of it we have to take into account. It's a lot. Volatility has increased, so we really need to apply artificial intelligence in order to keep and to be the best of the class. And we are. I think we have a competitive advantage of approximately 5 years versus the competition. But competition, there is also no standstill, so we just have to go on as is.
Mm-hmm. Well, I suggest that you start with your presentation. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you. Why we invest in artificial intelligence, I have just mentioned that. So then we have the fraud detection. You already referred to that, Joe. It's a very imminent and high risk at the moment. So besides the calculation for us as Allianz Trade, in order to predict or to calculate the probability of protected default of companies, besides that, because that was our core business, besides that, frauds become more imminent, the risks are increasing. So therefore, we have found also some solutions. The AI systems help us to detect fraud in existing systems more efficiently, but it's based on pattern recognition. You see a lot of patterns that are occurring, and of course it's the repetition of that makes us smarter. For example, a very simple example, when a buyer and a seller, for example, belongs to the same company, that might create a red flag. Not especially, but it might create a red flag. Our artificial intelligence software detects this and allows us to further investigate. Another example is, for example, when a buyer, we are assessing if this company is involved in a fraud case, in a lawsuit. We need to know that. So that's also implemented in our system of artificial intelligence. That also creates a trigger in the system, which gives also the opportunity or is the leverage, of course, to make a better assessment, more accurate assessment, and take, in the end, a better decision. If you look at the advantages, there are a lot of advantages of AI. First of all, prevented financial losses, as well directly, but also, I would say, indirectly, due to, for example, the reputation damage that might be also the result of that. Then faster action, the sooner the detection, the higher the potential to decrease the extent of fraud, a more complete document analysis, consistency and accuracy. That means, of course, that if you take all the humans being together, maybe it's a more, there's a higher discrepancy of the decision taking. So you have more reliable, comprehensive results based on artificial intelligence, more efficient use of resources. So the credit analysts, for example, they can focus on those ones based or issued by the input of artificial intelligence. They can use that, of course, to make a more in-depth analysis in order to predict the future. Then second part or second application is the document analysis done by artificial intelligence. An important task for financials and financial professionals is to analyze the number of documents, the balance sheet, P&L, cash flow statement, payment experience, but also sector knowledge, also country knowledge, etc. So hundreds of thousands of pages has to be assessed, and it's a very time-consuming job. So artificial intelligence enable us to do it in a very summarized way, but also the speed of it is so incredibly fast that it gives us as a company a lot of advantage versus competition. The artificial intelligence solution is that the documents analysis can very accurately and completely be analyzed and draw the right conclusions, because the conclusion, of course, is of the utmost importance. In order to assess, for example, the creditworthiness of a company, financial data and financial statements, payment expenses already mentioned, has to be assessed. We are currently developing and training our artificial intelligence software to think and act as an experienced financial analyst. In fact, we are copying to a certain extent a human being, so a human financial analyst. Then I would say the advantage, which are very important, so a higher efficiency. Also, the increased accuracy is very important due to the fact that machine learning maybe gives some more and more complete insights where the human being is maybe going to miss some important stuff. Secondly, the faster response, which is very important, of course, in our business, because what are we doing? We are granting credit limits for our customers to deliver to their customers in country X, in sector Y. So speed is very important. And that speed, of course, is also a competitive advantage versus competition. Consistent analysis, or artificial intelligence, ensures consistency in analyzing and leading to more reliable results. Better decisions making, faster and more complete, and the ability to comprehend hundreds or thousands of pages in a few seconds. Then the artificial intelligence business risk analysis. We already for years busy with that. Why are we doing that? So business analysis is a really complex process of identifying potential risks. Think of a financial risk, operational risk, strategic risk, but also compliance risk, reputational risks, and also ESG risks, which become more imminent and more important also. What is the artificial intelligence solution for that? So artificial intelligence provides a very fast, complete, and in-depth analysis based on a very wide range of data sources. So the financial reports, the sector reports, the country reports, historical events, which gives us a better decision in the end. Then what are the sources of this application of artificial intelligence, we make a sentiment analysis, so what's in the news about a certain company X. Then secondly, the social media monitoring, we also do that. So what is the public perception, in fact, of a certain company? So these two factors are, in fact, the soft data. Also legal affairs, of course, in part, is very important. Does a company feature in a legal matter? Then the supply chain analysis, is the company confronted with the supply chain disruptions that might happen in a certain sector or in a certain country, and of course it has a huge influence also on their performance. Last but not least, the geopolitical risk. So you've already spoken about Trump, president-elect. I think there is a lot going to be changed. We are already in a new world order. Protectionism is increasing, so these are imminent threats also for the global economy, and of course Belgium or the Netherlands, whatever country in Europe, is not standing alone. So the influence of that will be very, very huge. In the end, the advantages of this one is a more comprehensive analysis, higher speed, efficiency. The speed is very important because our customers, they want to deliver to to their customers all over the world. So they want to know for us if we are able to give a credit limit as soon as possible. So this speed and efficiency is of the utmost importance. Then also including the soft factors, as mentioned before. Also a proactive risk management and better decision making. That's it from my side.
Well, thank you very much, Johan. Well, I'm still looking for the questions that everyone who's watching can forward via the chat button that you can find on your screen for our both speakers, Joe and Johan. But first, Johan, you talked about speed is very important. The amount of information that AI can scan and get a very good conclusion. It can take a very good conclusion from it. What about analysts still working for Allianz Trade and other companies? Will you still need them?
Yeah, of course. I would say more than ever. Artificial intelligence is capable of quickly processing data and recognizing those patterns. Besides that, of course, artificial intelligence can automate routine and repetitive tasks such as sifting through large volumes, but in the end, interpreting and communicating to as well internal as external stakeholders remains of the utmost importance. So for that, we still need, of course, those analysts.
Yeah, and what about the workforce? Are you now hiring people with a new profile? What kind of people are you looking for now these days?
There is, of course, a shift. So it will be necessary to hire people with different skills. I think that's a very fair point. For sure, artificial intelligence will require to look for those skills. Financials will be also trained and are already trained and are required to incorporate more skills regarding data management, machine learning, and also the understanding of it. But additionally, of course, the soft skills, as already mentioned, and problem solving, but also critical thinking, creativity, working more agile, and things like that becomes also very important. So for that, we still need that.
Well, you can give people a training on the work floor. What about the younger generation, Joe? Do you see like young people are getting the right skills to work in companies later on? Are they interested in technology? What's your feeling about that?
Ooh, this is an interesting debate, Francesca, because if you look at primary and secondary education, in the Benelux countries at least, some institutions, some schools are already encouraging kids to take up programming as a course. It's still not mandatory, though. I always argue when experts I talk with argue that it should be a mandatory subject like math, like any language you get to learn. Programming should be a part of it, if only to understand those systems, how they are created and how they're operating. And maybe it will lead to you working on those systems as well. At the same time, you can also argue that the digital revolution and the fact fact that the current generation grows up having a smartphone in their hand is already making them more digital natives. But there is a debate on that, because from time to time we'll say they should spend less time on their screens. Others will argue, no, they should do more because the future is only going to be more digital. So we're not still really sure, and I think this will remain a polarizing subject in society. But I think if one thing should be said about this, is that just encouraging any youngster to get involved in the creation of digital technology, to get an understanding of it, we should do a lot better job in our countries.
And what about you? What do you think? Is it easy to find? Because all companies are complaining about not finding the right profiles on the labor market because there is a shortage. Is that something that Allianz Trade is experiencing as well?
No, we are not immediately direct with that. We are the biggest player in the world. Of course, that's also a point of attraction also to come to Allianz. There is a whole bunch of people as well in Paris as in München who is busy with that. So it becomes more and more important. So we don't have the insight also for the short future. Of on the short term, how many people are we going to need? But we already started 5-10 years ago by engaging people. So, and that brings us competitive advantages, which is very important in the financial sector to have.
Well, I've got more questions for you, but I want to give the viewers as well the time to write down their questions and forward them via the chat. Looking forward to your questions. But first, I want to give you 3 main takeaways of the presentations that we've just heard from Joe and Johan. The first one is improved efficiency and accuracy in risk management. The use of AI offers, it's very clear, significant benefits in the risk management process. With the support of AI, risks will be identified more quickly and comprehensively, because AI enables the efficient processing of large volumes of data, like Johan just said, and AI can do, of course, much more than humans can do, which is uncovering hidden patterns that are very difficult to detect by humans. Second takeaway, the dual role of AI in fraud detection and prevention. AI can detect suspicious transactions much faster than traditional methods because it analyzes patterns and anomalies in real time. But the downside is that people that want to commit fraud are using the same AI technologies, just like Johan mentioned. They can use fake documents, they can use deep fakes, and you were referring to that as well, Joe. So financial professionals should be aware of the fact that AI is not only being used to fight fraud, but can also be deployed by fraudsters. So as a financial professional, you should be cautious at all times. And the third takeaway is the AI revolution has only just begun. It offers many advantages, but we are still in the early stages of what this technology can ultimately achieve. The applications that we see today, such as fraud detection and document analysis, it's just the tip of the iceberg. So this technology is evolving rapidly. And as financial professionals, you must be prepared, or you must prepare yourself for a future where AI becomes an increasingly integral part of your work. So these are the main takeaways of the presentations of Joe and Johan. So let's come back to the questions. And I have a question for you, Johan, from someone who is watching. Is there a separate department working on AI at Allianz or Allianz Trade?
Yeah, especially. So I'm in charge as a risk director for the Benelux, but it's all steered from the headquarters, especially in Munich for the Allianz Group, and in Paris for the Allianz Trade entity. So, but yeah, it's hundreds and hundreds of people that are only involved, of course, to progress. And of course, we are the market leader globally, and we would like to keep that as is. So we are a data-driven company, and we just go on that way.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Well, the following question I think I can ask to both of you. What about the investment cost to implement AI? Joe, any?
Well, it's a tough one. I don't have the menu on that, if you will, but it does come with a significant cost, especially if you've decided to go all in with AI. It's worth the very thorough consideration how you're going to do that. In the US, you can see examples, which I'll just go as a telling example of companies already having layoffs because they're going to replace that with AI. That's not something I would recommend at all to anyone in Europe with a sound mind. Preferably look at the way to use AI to augment your business, to use it alongside the people you have. That will require an additional investment because you're not going to save on employee loans, but you're going to empower them to work more efficiently. When I speak to AI innovators in the Netherlands at least, who are developing and offering AI solutions, this is what they're telling their clients. They're not telling them you can save $1 million a year because you can send some people off. You can make them work better, more efficiently for you. So there is an added investment if you want to use AI.
Efficiency gains.
Efficiency gains,
And also you have to stay ahead of your competitor. That's something that counts as well.
Yeah, very true. That's fair point.
Yeah. So what about the investment? We don't need to know figures, but how big and how heavy is this investment in AI?
Yeah, they are very substantial, Francisca. Of course, the outcome and the effects, of course, are on the longer run, the midterm also. So this was a start. Besides that, of course, we're already busy, as already mentioned, with machine learning, big data, 20 years and 30 years ago. Now there is an accelerator, of course, on that via generative artificial intelligence. It's time-consuming, it costs a lot of money, but it's worthwhile.
Yeah. And is it an investment that you have to do in the beginning, or is it a constant investment that you have to do on a yearly basis?
It's a constant investment, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Because also people would like to commit fraud. Of course, they are very smart to do that. So we have to also to follow them simultaneously, maybe at a faster pace, of course, in order to detect that, in order to take the right measures and to protect, because that's, of course, the crucius, and of course the goal of our company is to protect our customers against, for example, fraud.
So it's a necessity.
It's a necessity because, and also credit, also a policy, for example, against fraud remains very useful, of course, because it doesn't mean that we do have inside the leverage that enables us, of course, to detect fraud. Okay, it's not that alone, of course. You need to cover and to protect also the customers so they can take also, of course, a fraud policy in order to be covered. And in case of an incident, that will be paid out.
Okay.
I would add to that, and I mean this in a positive way, the cat is out of the bag. When generative AI was just coming up, even the most knowledgeable tech experts we have on our show would say, I'm trying to ignore AI, but it's not possible because it's out there. People are using it to their advantage or as a bad actor, and you need to respond to that. And the best way to do it is to get involved with AI, know what's possible, invest in it, and be sure you have something to use, whether it's in your business compared to business rivals, or whether it's to protect yourself from bad actors. So you can't ignore it. You need to acquaint yourself with AI and then see how you use it for yourself.
Okay, well, thank you. Another question, it's one for you, Joe. How can AI help to get faster access to financial data?
I think as a lot of data can be inputs to get to paint a picture of any prediction or assessment or analysis before, for instance, undertaking a big investment. There's a lot you can input there. As I just told in my part of the presentation, I think it's always worthwhile to take into account which are the really key factors and which factors may not really be that important as such. And which factors which may not be top of mind for you can still be influential. So in that sense, when you want to get AI to make a prediction for you that makes sense, try to have a broad scope. Try to talk to people who you haven't talked to before about trying to get that AI prediction. I think it requires a more holistic approach than just tapping into an AI resource and saying, generate this for me. You need to have a proper thought about what you want to achieve.
Well, thank you. Another interesting question is coming in because Johan, you mentioned that you are putting data into the system and it's a self-learning process. But what about the ethical side of it? How do you know what that the system is learning in an ethical way or according to our principles or the principles of the company?
I think that's a very fair question. Of course, we also have to take into account that it gives, of course, a lot of opportunities, but of course there are also some threats. Of course, we have also compliance, we have also jurists, of course, inside of a company, that we take that factor into account. I think that's evident, of course.
Yeah. And what about regulation within the EU? Joe, do you have any idea?
Yeah, so we have the AI Act in place since this year, actually. One of the factors there is that you need to look well at the data you're putting in. This is also in correlation with the GDPR, for instance. You need to make sure, like Johan says, it's all compliant, it all adheres to all the privacy standards which we have in the EU. Then I should also say that speaking about the AI Act, it's mainly to protect society, to prevent, for instance, the misuse of facial recognition. But when you look at companies trying to use AI, there are still a fairly large amount of possibilities, but it's mainly just having a good chat with your legal department and the people in compliance to see what can we do. And especially when you're looking at, this refers to your previous question, European providers of technology, it's a much easier conversation because they need to adhere to those standards themselves because they're based here. Whereas if you're working with, for instance, an American company, you need to have a different compliance talk.
And who are the main European players in this field?
It very much depends on the AI application you're trying to get. As a whole, don't focus on the usual suspect. It'll be easy for anyone still to say, we need to get ChatGPT in our company. That's not the way you should be going straight away. There's a lot of AI models which you can use. For instance, Mistral from France, which are offered by European, Dutch or Belgian suppliers of AI solutions as well. Sometimes it's a mixture. Sometimes there's some open source AI models in there. It's generally a good idea, is my understanding, to have a mixture of AI solutions rather than just one-stop shop.
Yeah, because what we see, what probably is going to happen from next year onwards when Mr. Trump is going to be the next president from January onwards, US will be on its island and, well, let's Europe go its own course. So do we have, and also what we know from the European Commission and Ursula von der Leyen, we want to focus more on our own industry, and a lot of industry is moving away. It's doing, well, not too good at the moment, if I may say so. So do you see like smaller companies that have the potential to become bigger ones and to become really important within the European industry and economy?
First of all, I think good point mentioned that there is a lack of an industrial policy. Also, the European Union, of course, is very divided with 27 countries. When, for example, Mr. Orban is saying no, then it's a no for the full scope. I think we need to focus. We need to focus. But on the other side, I think it doesn't make any sense, for example, to blame, for example, China, to blame the United States. I think that's my personal opinion. The last 20 years, Europe was sleeping. And I think we have to do extra efforts in order to make a huge process. Of course, there is already a competitive disadvantage versus, for example, China, America. I think with America and Trump, it will be more difficult. But regarding China, I think I would not fight them. I would looking for partnerships, strategic partnerships, where, of course, there is a win-win situation for both parties, but at this moment, it is the only solution.
It's something that you referred to earlier on. We not always want to be dependent on big US tech companies because, well, the course that they go, especially what we've seen in the past year with the American elections, maybe we don't want to support these companies too much in the future.
No, but it's also very much a question of strategic autonomy, as we call it in digital innovation. As I was saying before, shouldn't just rely on US companies supplying your technological infrastructure. At the same time, like Johan just said, in Europe there hasn't really been a mentality to promote and invest in industry and technology. Sometimes you'll hear the saying they're trying to regulate their way to innovation by, for instance, fining American tech companies. I'm not saying they shouldn't do that, by all means go for it, but it should go alongside with an approach to promote and enable European companies to do more. Like I've just said, the example of France very much stimulating tech development. That's a mentality that should be adopted a lot more across the board in Europe. Same time, only this week I heard from one of the leading people in Dutch politics that they're also looking at the way to leverage Eastern Europe a bit more. Definitely look at partnerships in China, but you should also, when looking at the European Union, see which countries in, for instance, Eastern Europe could enable more production facilities, for instance. We're still not really having that conversation, and we should, because that will, you know, bolster the European economy, investment, and innovation as a result.
Yeah. We need that debate. Another question that's coming in. Do you think the use of AI in business poses more risks and dangers than benefits? If so, what risks do you see and how can they be addressed?
This is a tough one.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
You want to go first?
No, it's a tough one, but in the end I see more opportunities than threats. Of course, we spoke also about the regulation. Of course, we need, of course, a certain frame, that's for sure. But it will give so many opportunities, also challenges, and we have to counter them. The world is changing, also geopolitically. I think globalism in the full world, that's over, at least for certain decades. So we go to blocks of protectionist blocks, and they are going to make business with their hubs. But in the end, I think it's a good thing. We can do things faster. And in the end, customer centricity is of the utmost importance. So for Allianz Trade or for the Allianz Group, of course, we need, of course, to steer that in the right way. And we do that in order, of course, also to increase their customer satisfaction. So there is no return.
Yeah.
There is no return.
I would also add that it is a matter of perspective. I mean, sure, we've had the AI hype since the end of 2021 with ChatGPT and everything else that came along, but it is always been around. Like I said and showed in the slide at the beginning of my presentation, AI has been around for more than 65 years. It's been developed, it's been researched. It wasn't as prominent as the last 3 years, but it's here. And it's not going away. Yeah. It is still a question of how much influence is it going to have, and this is
but isn't
also
it that we
a societal
focus
debate.
more on the benefits and efficiency gains, etc.,
Yeah.
and we lose sight of the risks?
No, but this is why we need to keep having this conversation that we are having right here and that we're actually having in society. I would argue, I mean, look at when internet came along, when I was still a youngster, and then social media came along when I was just starting in this media business. We didn't have societal conversations about the impact of that rising technology with internet, with social media. With AI, we do have that conversation. Ever since ChatGPT came bursting onto the scene, everyone is at least aware of its existence and probably has an opinion about what it should be and what we should do with it. Maybe not everyone is as informed as the next person, but everyone has at least an idea of AI and what it could and shouldn't do.
Mm-hmm. And then education comes in. It's
Yes.
absolutely necessary that the young generation, we're a bit older, Johan, I'm sorry, but that the younger generation is very much aware of, well, the benefits, but also
no, but also the older generation.
How it works and
especially when talking about fraud. I mean, how many times on the news you see these reports about most notably elderly people being the victim of consumer fraud, which is also augmented by AI. So it should be education for all ages.
Yeah, because one of the main takeaways was that we're just at the beginning. It's just the top of the iceberg. So what's coming towards us? Do you have any idea? I'm sure that you've been talking to specialists that are already looking like years and maybe
so this is an interesting
ahead.
one. With a lot of technological innovations, you see them becoming a commodity, which has already happened with AI when ChatGPT came along, and then it's about selecting and using the best one for business application as well, to a more visible extent than in the past, because like I said, AI has been around for some time. At the same time, I think innovation's slowing down a little bit. If you look at OpenAI as a company behind ChatGPT has already said we're not going to launch the next version of ChatGPT anytime soon. We're just looking at, trying to get the current model more efficient. So it's interesting times in the sense that innovation seems to be slowing down a little bit, and people are trying to get a foothold in, okay, there's so much AI right now, so much we can try and use. Give them some breathing time to see what they can use, and then we can see the next round of innovation.
Yeah. All right, Johan, there's talk of advanced fraud detection tools. Will it no longer be necessary to have fraud insurance in the future? That's another question.
Not at all. I think artificial intelligence, of course, enables us and gives us the leverage to detect. That's the first point, but also to decrease further risks or further disadvantage, for example, reputational damage, etc. But as already mentioned before, of course, we need a policy against fraud due to the fact you can identify, but it doesn't mean that it has been solved. So if a company is really confronted with that, they can go bust. So therefore, I would like to suggest to take a policy against fraud, because then they are covered, and in case of an incident, they will be paid out.
All right, well, our time is up. It's 11:30, and people still have to work, although it's Friday, but it's still 11:30, so an afternoon to go. I'd like to thank you very much. Have a good trip back to the Netherlands, Joe, and thank you very much, Johan.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you are interested in the Allianz Trade Solutions, I invite you to go to the website. Depending on whether you live in the Netherlands or Belgium, go to allianztrade.be or .nl. This webinar will be shared with you later on, so you can watch the whole program again if you want to, or you can share it with anyone who's interested in this topic. So thank you very much for watching. I wish you a very good Friday afternoon and, of course, a very good weekend. Thank you.